Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to fiscal year 2023 budget discussion meetings. This is the Ways and Means Committee, subcommittee of the Greenfield City Council. It is Monday, April 11th, 2022. It is 6:01 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order and read the following statement. This meeting is being recorded and videotaped by the Ways and Means Committee and GCTV 15. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time. Okay, I don't see any. I'd like to do a roll call, please. Mike, Councilor Toronto.
I'm here.
Okay, Councilor DeSorga.
Here.
Councilor Jarvis.
Here.
Councilor Healy. Okay, and I'm Councilor Forgy. We have a quorum and we can proceed with the meeting. First item of business is the approval of minutes on March 22nd, March 29th, and March 31st, 2022. May I have a motion?
So moved, Toronto. Second, Jarvis.
Do I have a? Okay. Are there any additions, corrections, addendums? Okay, so hearing none, we'll take a vote on it. All those in favor of the minutes as presented this evening, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, good. Thank you. We have no public hearing and we have no motions, which moves us on to the great expected event of every year, which is the budget discussion. The budget discussion, we are now doing the general operating budget. This evening, we are going to start this off with the executive presentation for fiscal year 2023 operating budget. This will include the mayor and the finance budgets. So if everybody is okay and ready to start, I'll ask the mayor to start us off, please.
Could I ask for a point of clarification? So Finance Director Gilman has prepared a presentation, sort of the overview presentation of the budget.
Okay.
For you folks tonight, and is prepared to present that. And then we can, I guess I need to understand exactly what it is that you would like us to do. I'm prepared to discuss the mayor's budget, the individual budget in the meeting, as well as is, I think, Finance Director Gilman is the finance budget. But she has the overall presentation of fiscal year 23, if you'd like to do that. It's a few slides, but you know, it won't take that long. So just let me know if that's what you were thinking first.
Thank you, Mayor. If everybody is in agreement, we can start off with our presentation from Finance Director Liz Gilman. Are there any objections to that? Okay. Thank you for that clarification, Mayor. And Liz, welcome. We're happy to have you here. And we'd love if you could, I love it if you could lead us off in the presentation.
Okay. Oh, it's just being pokey. What can I say? Can you see that?
Not yet.
Not yet, no.
Wow. This is not good.
Are you doing a share screen?
Don't have our content. Is that something that's, I got that message that I cannot share. We make sure you've allowed permission to share content. content.
I think that would be to you, Chris.
I think it should just allow you, but
Um,
So-
I guess, wait, hang on. Thank you. I just, let me see,
If anybody needs my IT skills, I'm happy to chime in.
I'm just clicking around to see if there's some setting I
Hang
can
tight,
tell you about.
Counselor Disorder, hang tight. We'll
Um,
if we need you.
well, I have something that I can share my screen with you.
I do too.
So do I. And it's just bizarre.
The bottom share screen thing isn't working.
Yeah, that normally just, you hit,
Liz, if I can suggest that you send it to Danny or Chris, and then they could kind of run the
No.
slide presentation for you, if that might help.
that happened last year, believe it or not. Can
I
you believe it?
remember.
I remember that.
Who wants it?
He wants it.
Yeah, we can do it, yeah.
Oh, well,
Man,
Sorry about that. Well, I can lead off.
Whatever. All right, I'll watch for it. I'll pull it up.
okay. I'm gonna have to do it from my other computer.
Just as a Counselor Forgy,
Yes.
while they're getting that together, let me just lead off, if you would. I can lead off with a short comment or two about the overall budget. Okay.
Yep, we welcome that. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So I did send you the budget. I forget when, April 1st. I think that was my we'll say, I think that was my deadline. And so it was sent to council with the mayor's memo. And I just want you all to know that this was so far in my brief tenure as mayor, one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I've done a lot of hard things since January 2nd, 2020. But putting together this budget on the heels of FY20, FY21, which I didn't have any input into FY20, 21, and 20.
Oh, I can't hear you now.
You
I
froze.
lost you.
You're frozen.
22. Okay. I'm looking at me on the camera. Am I doing okay?
Well, we
Yeah.
lost what you were saying after it was a very difficult year for you, the hardest year yet.
Oh, okay. So I just was putting it in the context of the three budget. Yeah, well, this would be FY23. So I had no input into FY20. Mayor Martin did that. So I did the best I could. FY21 was different. And on the heels of both FY21 and FY22, the one we're in now, both of them challenging years, both of them tight budget years. Unfortunately, FY23 is the same way. So I just need for you to understand that as we go into this budget, what you're looking at is the result of already cutting $800,000 out of the originally presented to me before I give it to you budget. And that is in an effort to balance the budget. And it was probably one of the most difficult things I've ever done, because what it did was remove all the hope. I guess I'd need to say there were a lot of good new positions that deserve to be in there that were cut out, and many things. So what you see is a balanced budget that we can run the city on for FY23 beginning July 1st. And we are ready to do that. And I can tell you that each and every department put their effort into that. Not only the one they presented to me, but then when we had to go in and do the adjustments that we had to do. So everybody has been consulted, and it's been discussed with them and presented to you tonight, to Ways and Means, and will be presented, of course, at the public hearing. It's a good budget. It's just not the budget that we all wanted to have for FY23 to present to the city.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Everybody, I hope, can see a screen
Can
that
you
says
see it?
City of Greenfield,
All right.
April
Okay,
11th,
can I start?
2022.
Can
Yep,
I start? Okay, here we
absolutely.
go. I'm sorry this took so
No,
long.
that's okay. Thank you. We're all set to go.
So since we have a few new counselors, I just wanted to go through some basics on the components and process. The basic components is to develop a budget schedule. I send out to department heads in September the schedule. Later on in the fall, I will send out guidelines and parameters for them. The next component is revenue. That's part of why the guidelines take a while, because I want to get a feel for what local receipts are looking like. And if I've heard anything on the state aid outlook. It was very quiet this year, by the way, on the state aid outlook. The next component is expenditures. And again, that's more revenue driven. Usually the only expenditure we know at this point is probably the retirement assessment. But other than that, they all come forward as we are working on the budget. So the revenue components are property tax, net state aid, local receipts, other available funds, and indirects. And based upon the anticipated revenues, that's what I give the department heads to work with. So I'm going to start with property tax, everyone's favorite. But first I want to show you how large a component that is. Here you go. It's almost 60% of our revenue, 59.9. State aid accounts for 30.8. Local receipts are 7.4. Indirects are 1.4, and available funds 0.6. I think it helps graphically to see that, but we are so dependent upon the property taxes. So how do they work? Well, it's 2.5 times the prior year tax levy. Then you add new growth, which is development, new construction, perhaps an improvement depending on the addition. So the valuation isn't a factor in the maximum tax levy or the amount of the tax revenue. So I'm going to show you what is. So this is the actual form we use, okay? This sets the levy limit, what's known as how much we can assess in taxes. So in the yellow there is 22's levy limit, 37,889.49. That's the beginning of where I start right down below for 23. And in the blue, you add 2.5% of that. That's where that 2.5 comes from. And then you estimate your new growth at this point. So I have 220 in there, and I have a total levy limit of 39,447,973. So if you take that 39 million here on the next page, you add a debt exclusion. The only debt exclusion we have is the high school. And what that means is it's outside 2.5. So what that means, I'm going to go back a bit. That 947, that's 2.5%. Well, this is now added to it. So it's outside it, it's in addition to. So that brings us to 40,469,123. tax levy divided by your value times 1,000 is your tax rate. So the value kind of divides up the levy or allocates it. It doesn't create the levy. So what creates the levy? Well, it's basically your operating budget, less local receipts, net state aid, and available funds and indirects, all those other revenue sources. So this is our net state aid. This year, I'll show you a history on the next slide, but this year in the blue is the governor's budget. Chapter 70 was our major increase. It was pretty big, 12.5%. It's a start in the right direction. Unrestricted general government aid was only 2.7%, but at least it wasn't level funded. But hopefully this is a sign that things are coming out of the pandemic and starting to improve. So here's the governor's budget history. We base our budget based upon the governor's budget. So what I'm showing you here are governor's budgets each year. So you can see from 2021 and 22, it was kind of tough. There wasn't a lot of increases. So we really are starting to see an increase in 23. The assessments are things that they charge us for. They are expenses, but the state deducts them directly from our state aid. So it looks better this year in 23, definitely better. The next component is local receipts. The green bar is the 23 estimated local receipts. Motor vehicle is hanging in there, and I'm actually pleased at that because I thought that perhaps you hear there's no new vehicle sales, that it wasn't going to be at least at the same level, but it is, so that's good. Pay as you throw is being shown higher because there's going to be an increase in the price. However, you definitely see an improvement in meals tax and hotel tax. It's starting to come back. So thank goodness. And of course, our favorite cannabis is doing quite well. Everything else seems to be holding their own. And I just want to show you on the cannabis. To date for the local receipts, it's $291,549. So what do I mean by the local receipts of cannabis? This is the hosting agreement and a 3% local charge to the retailers. There's another 3% over here that is the sales tax that is charged to by the retailer and sent to the state, and then the state sends it back to us. And that amount goes into this OPEB stabilization. So that's this so far this year is $201,260, which is pretty good. And there's been a lot of interest on this. So I did a little bar graph for you. The local hosting is on the left and the OPEB stabilization is on the right. So you can see that it's definitely rapidly increasing. The grand total between both of them from 2019 to 2022 to date is $1,126,92258. That's pretty good for a revenue source that appeared. You know, it was not something initially here. The local receipt portion is 575,096.83 of that million. And the OPEB stabilization is 551,825 of that million. So the other parts of the revenue, parking meter receipts is a local receipt. OPEB stabilization. Last year was the first year we used some of that established money. This will be the second year. We are using it toward retiree benefits, either new retirees or just the increase in the insurance premium for the retirees. Free cash. Then indirects for water and sewer. And what do I mean by that? Well, these are costs in the general fund, and the easiest one to think of is health insurance, that the general fund pays the health insurance and the enterprise funds pays back the general fund. So now we get to the fun part, the expenditure budget. 58,329,672. And that is composed of general government, 8.3%. Public safety, 13.7%. Public works, 5.1%. Human services, 1.6%. Culture and rec, also 1.6%. And FERCog barely makes it there at 0.2, but they're on there. The largest appropriation is for direct appropriation is for education, 38.2%. And that is followed by this large red center that I call fixed costs, 31.2%. What are those fixed costs? Well, oh, I'm sorry. This is an overall increase of 3,857,152. It's a 7.8% increase. So the major drivers for the increase, well, the school committee appropriation, $1,250,000. The Chapter 70 increase was substantial in that for the great majority of it goes directly to the school department. The other piece goes toward their increase in things like health insurance and retirement. General fund salary and wages is up $1,159,996. Debt service is up $624,769. Health insurance $334,520. Retirement assessment $296,725. And lastly, energy at $134,766. The reason for that is a lot of our solar credits expired. So fixed costs, I kind of jumped ahead before that, but the fixed costs, those are costs that cover every single department in the city. Benefits, insurance, debt service, property and liability insurance. And it's a significant amount. The great majority of, yes, is benefits. Probably 26 of the 31 is benefits. So I'm going to give you an example of this, how it covers everyone. This is a report from Department of Education. And the school in the green column is what the schools spent out of their school committee appropriation, their direct appropriation. But what also must be reported is what the city pays on behalf of the school department. So you'll see retirement contribution, the insurance is health insurance and property liability, retiree insurance, health insurance, school choice, charter school assessment. All these things come out of the city side of the budget. And so this is true for every department. You know, there's health insurance for the police department, there's health insurance for the fire department, but it's all paid out of that one fixed cost center. So what does this mean? Here we go. A tax rate of 2307. That's a 75-cent increase, or a 3.35% increase. And 167 on an average family tax bill. $13.92 a month. And that, my friends, is the end. I have to figure out how to unshare. I do this. Oh, stop sharing. Stop sharing. Where is it?
You did it.
I did?
I don't see
I
it
did it
anymore.
accidentally.
Someone did.
Oh, I think I was sharing mine.
Sure
I did pretty good.
Yeah.
did.
It's almost like we
All right.
rehearsed. All right.
Whoever did the sharing, thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Is there more you'd like to add, Liz or Mayor? If
As the mayor said, it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, all I would say is that just a reminder that the as it is every year, the primary driver is salaries and wages for the city of Greenfield. Our marching orders back in December from Finance Director Gilman was that the union salaries as they have been negotiated are to be honored, and that is what we did in this year. And as I will remind you, we did settle all of the contracts eventually. In December, we still had 2 to go, but we did eventually settle them, and we made those adjustments before we presented this budget to you. Non-union salaries, so that's your department heads and your NRs, were to be entered at 3%. And I say that because that is still less than most of the negotiated contracts at the end of the day, and because from FY21 until today, your department heads, the people that actually are responsible for running each department, the people for whom the buck stops, had been taking 1% increases. So it was time for them to actually be able to also be recognized for the work that they do and also paid for the work they do. And if we're going to remain competitive in the general marketplace for DPW directors, police chiefs, economic development directors, and the like, chiefs of staff, we need to be able to pay these folks. So that is it. As far as expenses are concerned, we asked each department once again to level fund as much as possible. Certain departments are subject to contracts. I would say Marlowe's department is the one most subject to it, but others too. So if you had a contract that you were honoring in the budget and that there was an increase negotiated for that contract for an expense, then you had to honor that. But in general, we kept our department budgets at level fund or a small percentage to acknowledge costs, potential costs. As we began to understand, things are costing a lot more right now, some of which we were able to capture in the budget that we presented to you, but I think you've heard, particularly where fuel increases are concerned or other things, materials, anything, supplies, they've gone up. So what you see is a budget that, as I said before, was worked on by each and every department, consulted with each and every department by the mayor. And we're actually kind of glad we're done with that process. And we can move on and have presented it to you.
Thank you. So if you would indulge me a little bit, I have a couple of questions to ask, no surprise. First of all, I wanted to go on to the, let me just see here. on to page 31 in the budget book, which is the tax rate recapitalizations, the recap sheet.
Mhm.
And I had a question about,
Unfortunately, I will say to you, the only thing that didn't get put in my briefcase before I came home was the budget book. So, but I do
Okay.
have the recap sheet. If you're asking me the question, or if you're
I
asking
am
Liz
asking
first.
Liz the question,
Yeah,
so,
good,
Yeah, but
good,
I
good,
don't,
good.
I have to pull up the budget book because I didn't get a copy.
okay,
So
I got
So
mine.
mine went away.
No, I'm just pulling it up.
that's fine.
Um, and you said page 31?
Page 31.
Okie dokie.
So the middle of the page, it was the enterprise deficit for fiscal year 22.
Yes.
I wonder if you could explain that 310, 331 to me.
So that is a deficit from the GSET enterprise that if you look on prior recaps, if you're so inclined.
No, I
you'll
don't think I am, but okay.
So we are not anticipating that for 23. We actually, last year during setting the tax rate, DOR said they did not want to see it. So, we are working with that. But that's what it is. If they don't, if an enterprise doesn't hit their revenue number and or they go over their appropriation, it results in a deficit. Now, water and sewer generally have retained earnings or raise their rates. That hasn't been an option for GSEP because they're just starting out and are building the user base.
Okay.
So that's why you saw that there.
Okay. And so how do we take care of that deficit? I know that's probably do I want to say, Liz, that this is a solid number, or is there any chance that this number will decrease?
No, there's nothing in it for 23. That's 22.
No, I'm talking about 22. When we close the fiscal year, we will close it in a
I'm
good
sorry.
balance.
I'm sorry. So one of the things that as we get closer to the year, it does look that they're going to be very close to the revenue number. Close.
Okay.
Closer than they have been, let's put it. And so I'm okay with that. The question is whether they go over the appropriation amount, which from the Department of Revenue, they suggested just don't charge the indirects. So in other words, they don't want to see another deficit. So if you don't charge the indirects, that
Right.
helps too. That should contain it so that there's not a deficit.
Okay.
And if I may add, part of the rationale for using the ARPA money for broadband
Right.
was so that they could get to complete build out so that they could get more customers. So it's not a short-term strategy, it's a long-term strategy. But that was my rationale for taking that significant amount of money under ARPA and giving it to broadband, which I was allowed to do under the ARPA guidelines.
Yep.
Okay. If we go to page 32, I'm looking at OPEB stabilization, which remains the same at this point, 22, 23, department request, 23, mayor request. Now, you just talked about using marijuana revenue to go into OPEB stabilization. How does this particular piece play into that OPEB stabilization fund?
So you will see a separate financial order because it's 2/3 vote because it's stabilization.
Mhm.
Whereas the regular general operating budget is majority vote. So there's a separate order. It helps support the new retirees coming onto health insurance
Right.
and or the increase in the actual retirees' health insurance cost. Like for example, health insurance is going up 4%.
Right.
So what happens is that transfer gets recorded actually as of June 30 to be used toward the revenues, basically, for the 23 budget. So there's 100,000 in there from OPEB stabilization.
Okay. I'm
Okay.
okay, but not okay. Hang on just a minute.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm trying to-
Okay, I get the part about the marijuana revenue, that dedicated piece. This is coming, this $100,000 is coming into OPEB stabilization in addition to the cannabis?
No, it's not coming into, it's coming out. It's being
Out
used as an
of.
available fund.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
That's great.
Just like the parking meters, yeah.
Got it. Okay. What was our free cash last year? About?
2.8.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to, I actually have it here.
Um,
Go ahead.
Is it an expectation that we will have the same, less, or more? I know I'm asking you to gaze into the crystal ball. I get that, but
So,
I'm
I
interested.
would say less.
Okay.
Definitely, like I would say a normal range is anywhere from 1.4 to 1.6.
Okay.
It can be more. Again, you just never know on certain revenues or, for example, in 21, there was a lot of the school did not hire a lot of people. Like normally in September, it's a revolving door, honestly. Right. And so there was a significant amount left in health insurance because they didn't hire people or really delayed. And then the public works department also had a lot of vacancies that they just couldn't fill. Like people were not applying. So believe it or not, a family insurance is about cost. The city's portion is nearing $20,000 for just one family. So if you have 10 or 20, 30 people, that adds up that are not hired. Why is this not? I'm sorry, I'm looking up the exact number here for you.
Okay.
Oh, 2.4, 2.34.
Okay, that's fine.
So, yeah, and I would say normally, you're looking at 1.6, but that health insurance, there was a chunk that came from health insurance.
Right.
So, yes, and that's healthy. I can tell you, having just been on a bonding call, that Standard & Poor's want to see us keep building our reserves.
And could you elaborate on how we did on that bonding call?
Pretty darn good.
Good. We'd like to hear the news.
We keep hoping. I keep hearing we're ever like so close to getting an upgrade on our bond rating.
Okay.
And so what I heard was we want to see one more year of increased reserves.
Okay. Increased reserves. All right.
At a minimum, we're looking at something north of the AA-, like AA, A.
Okay. Okay. That's good. That's good.
A AA- isn't that shabby.
So I want to return to cannabis, and I do apologize, Liz, because I did send you a memo during the budget preparation period where I wanted to know about cannabis revenue, where it's recorded, and what detail is there to it. Is there any specific rationale as to where it can be allocated or must be allocated? Is that a decision that the mayor makes?
No,
And so if you could explain that to me, I would be very
I
happy.
will explain it, but that's one reason why I put that one slide in the PowerPoint to talk about what came in where.
Right.
So I'll start, the easier one is the OPEB stabilization. That was voted. That is the 3% sales tax. So it comes in as a wire from the state. It goes directly into that OPEB stabilization. Was a voted by city council, and so that's where it goes. The other is considered a local receipt, just like any other local receipts,
Okay.
like motor vehicle excise, like building permits and hotel and meals tax. It's considered a local receipt,
Okay.
and therefore it supports overall the general operating budget. That's where it is. It's supporting the general operating budget. If we go over the total local receipt budget, then yes, that helps produce free cash. But some come in lower, some come in higher. So you have to look at it as a bottom line number, that this is total local receipts.
So I am a bit confused about how the host community agreement payment that comes into us, is that also included in local receipts?
Correct.
And so it cannot be diverted to say go to a specific organization or
No.
anything like that. It's all coming into local receipts.
General fund revenue is per Mass General Law. It's general fund revenue unless it says otherwise.
Okay.
It says so that you could possibly, the only way you can redirect certain general fund revenue, like for example, obviously we can't divert our state aid or divert our whatever. It has to be a local receipt, but it must go to a stabilization fund. That is the only way to do that. And that's why we
Okay.
instead of it going
No.
Can't hear you.
What was that?
You're kind of in and out. You're stuck. There you go.
No, I thought there was a question. So basically we have to vote out of the stabilization to even move it to the trust. But the only way to establish diverting
Lost you again.
Yep. We lost you again, Liz.
If everybody would either get off their video or mute while she's talking, I think it would be better.
It has to be certain ones.
Liz, I don't have you.
Is to a stabilization.
Okay.
Hear me?
I've got
I'm not on. Oh, stop the video. I'll stop.
No,
You don't have
no,
me. Wow.
no, I would
Yes.
I can hear your voice, but we can't see you.
And that's okay.
Oh yeah, I turned it off. I turned it off so that possibly you could at least hear me.
Okay. Okay.
So basically, if you start diverting local receipts, then you ultimately have to make a cut to the general operating budget. And the reason we did the cannabis was it wasn't something that was there before. It never was
Okay.
originally part of the local receipts.
Okay. Before we go a little further here, could I ask the members of Ways and Means to put your video on? I think it's important for the public to see all of you. Also, Liz and the mayor, that would be great since and Danny, that because you're doing the presentations tonight. So if you'd like to put your video on.
As long as you can hear me.
Okay, that's fine. I'm still looking. Okay, I can see you. Good. Thank you. Thank you, counselors. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so I've asked all of the questions that I have right at the moment, but I want to ask the rest of the committee if they have questions on the presentation so far. And then after that, I'm going to just go into the mayor's budget, and then we'll be done with everything this evening. So if there are any questions on the presentation that Liz has provided right now, please go ahead and speak up. Wow.
I have a
Ginny,
question.
go ahead.
Okay. So I had the same page star that Councilor Forgy did on the middle of page 31. And so, and my questions were on GSET. So this year we did it, I had a question mark there. And then this year we didn't put anything for GSET Enterprise Fringe. Could you explain that? That is
Related.
not
Related.
we're not talking to the 100. We're not talking about the past 2 years' figures. Was that
Correct.
the fringe should have been their benefits, right? No.
Yes, but we're talking about what the, if you recall just a bit, I'd said the Department of Revenue did not want any more deficits from GSET. The Department of Revenue is in charge of setting our tax rate, so we kind of try to go with their recommendations. So in order to make sure there was not a deficit, we did not put that in.
Okay. And on them, there was an initial borrowing by them, I think from the city to get that wonderful thing started for 5 million. And I think their borrowing is down to about 4.2. Did they pay their own bills?
They do.
Okay.
And that's another reason, that initial 5 million. I think that the current general manager would not have spent it in the same vein as it was spent. Yet he does have to deal with the debt service on that 5 million. And it was just recently bonded, and it is showing up in the 23 budget for GSET.
Okay. So 2 more just on these 2 pages, the OPEB stabilization. So we actually took money out of stabilization then to put into the general fund. That's actually what that means.
Yes, the difference being for OPEB is that it has a recurring revenue source coming to it. It has that 3% sales tax that replenishes it outside of free cash that isn't a normal stabilization funding mechanism.
Okay. So lastly, just in general, on the local receipts, which are all those special other things that come in, like the meals tax, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that goes towards something? And I'm actually thinking about parking. Our parking's been down, which certainly for many reasons. One, but the parking, it said parking meters. Does
Yes.
that include the garage, the parking meters?
Yes.
And I heard somebody say once, does the parking meter revenue or any of the parking receipts go to pay for the parking garage? Or is
Well,
that
in theory,
all together?
oh, sorry. In theory, it does because it's supporting the general fund, debt service, and general fund parking department. So all those costs, it's supporting the general fund operating budget. So
Okay.
the debt service is in the general fund.
Right, yeah.
The transfer from that goes in to help support the general fund.
Mm-hmm. And so what do we get from the parking garage, I guess? That's my last one on this.
I don't see it split out. Danny?
I mean, I can get parking garage data, but I don't have it for tonight. But I can say that we have seen an increase this year. We changed the pricing last year in the summer on the monthly passes to make it a little more alluring. We lowered it. So it's only slightly, if you were to buy a monthly pass in the parking garage, it's only slightly higher than buying the annual parking permit for an uncovered spot. And so Kelly Varner and I were talking about, we were worried we were going to fill up. There was a point this winter where we were just about sold out. I mean, we still keep some for, we have a certain, strategy with the numbers to keep some for turnover traffic and for people from like the courthouse. But we sold out almost the maximum number of allowable spots. But I could get those actual figures. I've been like futzing around with parking numbers actually this week and last week and all year, just trying to figure things out. Because as you guys know, this is a question that comes up a lot, and it's a question that I get a lot and that I have. So we can find the number from the parking garage. What we can't do is we can't necessarily tell you the number from right now from like this lot versus that lot versus that lot. But because the parking garage is such a unique entity, I can get that number. But it's been up there a little bit, even though it's down everywhere else.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Long answer. Sorry.
No, that was a great answer. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
So anybody else have questions for Liz on this financial overview presentation of our budget? If not, I'm going to ask the mayor if she wants to. I have a couple of questions about the budget.
Yeah.
But if she wants to do a presentation on that budget, that would be great. We'd appreciate it.
So
Well,
Chris,
thank you. Thank you, Counselor Forgy. I don't have a presentation
Okay.
in the sense that you just saw. We have the mayor's budget, as you see it in your budget book. The salary increases are what they are for the communications director, the grant writer and administration person, and the admin assistant, and myself. So 3% for me. The rest of them are also NRs at that 3%. And mind you, NR salaries are negotiable salaries between the mayor and any of the NRs out there. NR for the public and for the new counselors is non-represented. NRs are not part of a union. We do have a situation, doesn't affect the mayor's office, in which some of our NRs are actually part of the S unit, but that does not affect the mayor's budget. So those salaries are negotiable. So they don't always appear in the exact percentage that you might look for, but we try to do it within reason. We also kept as close as we could to the 1% for expenditures. So whether it's marketing, website, well, it's basically the marketing budget. Website design and development and printing. Advertising is advertising and so forth. So my budget doesn't differ a lot than any other department. I'm just a whole lot smaller than they are.
Okay, thank you. I have a few questions if I can. Um,
I'll
I
do
just want, I want to verify that within the mayor's budget is your salary, then there's salary for your executive assistant or
that.
um,
Administrative assistant.
administrative assistant, and then there's a salary for a communications director.
That is correct.
Okay, and those are the employees that are in your department.
There
Then
is,
in executive,
well, if I may, there
Yes.
is the grant writer administrator, Athena, and oddly enough, there is the, um, it- basically, I'm going to say it's MJ's position, but it
Okay.
doesn't appear here in there. It appears in her side of the budget.
Yeah.
But so
Okay.
what you're looking at in terms of my budget is just what you said. Besides myself, the administrative assistant, the communications director, and the grant writer, who
Okay.
is part-time.
Part-time.
It's a
Okay.
part-time salary.
Okay.
It remains part-time for FY '23.
Okay.
We did not increase it to full-time as we had hoped we could, but it was one of the cuts that I mentioned earlier. So,
Okay.
that is, in terms of salaries, that is who we are. This is us.
Okay. And in executive administration, it's Danny. Okay.
It's separate. Don't ask me
That's it.
why. Just
Okay.
the way it is.
That's fine. So I just want to, for the folks at home, I just want to read out the salary requests. So for the mayor, the salary right now is 90,059. The request is 93,157. The permanent salary and wages for two positions was 96,932. And now, according to my book, it says 164,887. And then it goes back down again from 136,768. So I wondered if you could explain that a little bit.
I can't because I don't recognize those numbers. The salary for the mayor for this year is 92,800. That represents a 3% increase over last year. I'm fairly certain, same as other NRs. And I'm not sure where those other numbers come from. quite frankly.
Okay.
And as I said, I don't have my budget book with me.
I
That's
have my
okay.
budget book. I
Okay.
can I weigh
Yes,
in?
please, please.
Because I have the book. So mayor's salary is under the 5110, which
Correct.
90 to 93, right? Roughly. The permanent salary and wages full-time, that is up because you'll see that in previous years, we had an area under salary and wages part-time for a year, full year. And previous to that, we had nobody in that position because that was a new position. So that's the grant writer administrator. And then the second part of that is that, and this is just stuff around the edges, that when we added the communications, I mean, if you add those two together, it ends up being one. I added those together earlier today to see how close it was to the fiscal 23 request. And then I realized the difference is that last year, I think during a period of time when we first created the communications position, it was mid-year and it wasn't fully funded. I think we may have had to fund that from another place. So that person didn't get a large increase. They were making about the same as this new person is. And year to year, but we used, I believe the mayor might have had to use some mayor's unrestricted to round out that position. And then if you look back historically, there's this weird blip too, where both under the 5111 and under my whole line item and area, those budgets went down to zero in FY 20 and then went back up. So it looked like a big increase, but it actually wasn't. It was because of a weird thing that happened with the outgoing mayor zeroing out some accounts and then relying on the new mayor coming in to decide to reinstate those positions or not. So it's a little weird. You have to look back at a few fiscal years to kind of understand that we do have a new, the position of communications director does have more responsibility and oversight of the communications area than did, say, what was called the communications and constituent it was a communications and constituent coordinator under the previous mayor, but it's still the same number of positions. However, we added the grant writer position.
Yeah, it's the grant.
That is correct. I see where I now have my budget detail report up, so
Yeah.
I get the questions that you're asking.
Totally. I added those two numbers together today, Chris, just for that same question. I was
Yes.
like, what are they going to ask? Because I was putting my what are the counselors going to ask hat on.
Same.
Good, good.
So
So-
I have them.
Just to clarify then, Mayor, you said a $92,000 figure, but I'm showing
Yes,
93,157.
that is correct. Yes.
That's correct. Okay,
That is
thank
correct.
you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So that is
And-
it's like 3.5%, right?
Yeah, that's what I think it's coming out to.
Liz has a reason for that.
That is
So
a point. It's an accrual. It
it's
represents
a
the
payroll
accrual.
accrual. So there's a 0.2 of a week that goes, it's not additional salary. It just gets charged
To
per
the fiscal year. Yeah.
Yes.
That is true for every position.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can't go through the book and just do percentages. It's not going to give you the right number.
No.
Yep, I remember that. And for executive director Danny Letourneau, it's 79,387 to 81,456. Is that correct?
That sounds correct. That's what I see
Mhm.
with the accrual piece.
Okay. I have a couple more questions, if I may. Mayor, you are not receiving car allowance. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And you are not receiving a clothing allowance or anything like that.
That is
Okay.
correct.
Thank you very much. I
What
just
you
have all
see
these
is what you
questions.
get. I don't
I
even
have
get
all these-
healthcare because I opted out.
Okay, no problem.
I do
No,
think-
I'm not. I'm just trying to set the record straight.
Yes, all right.
Okay,
Workers'
so
comp or any of that. Yeah.
I do take the health care.
it's good. It's all good. It's all
It's
good.
good health care.
Yeah, it
Your
is good
friends that-
healthcare.
Get a job for the
I
city.
only opted out because it was the same as I already had.
Sure, there you go. Yep. So from Ways and Means, from the committee themselves, do you have any questions for the mayor about her budget and the executive administration budget as well?
We covered it.
Okay, I'm not seeing anybody.
I do.
Jenny's got her hand up.
I always have questions.
Okay, go ahead, Jenny.
So you know what? Under the purchase of service in fiscal year 2021, it was 2,389, and fiscal for this year. Then last year it was 16,500, and this year it's 17. What is that? What do we use that for? What is that about? I just was curious. Nothing more than my curiosity.
Web,
The largest item under the purchase of service is the marketing budget. And that is it.
website stuff, yeah, is on there, right?
I mean, under that is the website, because we're in FY 21 and FY 22, we were in a pandemic. I didn't think that it was smart to spend marketing money at that particular point, other than what we did. And so we have a $17,000 budget. And I hope to be able to use it well going forward. We are creating a new website. Part of that, part of what was being used from FY 22 and into FY 23 is the new website, which I'm hoping to launch by the end of this year.
Yeah.
And it's going to be fabulous from what I've seen so far. So, from a constituent point of view, in terms of how the constituents use it, as well as showcasing why Greenfield's just a great place to be. But there's other uses which I just frankly haven't spent yet because we haven't had an opportunity to create the marketing program. But we are in the process of doing that now.
And then Liz, for purchase of services in other departments, isn't it, will you correct me if I'm wrong? This tends to be the account for things like hiring outside
Mhm.
consultants or one-off things like that. Is that true?
Purchase of service.
For purchase of services, yeah, there's various things depending on the uniqueness of the department. For example, on ours, we might have something like a copier lease or something. The other folks might have advertising or, yeah.
Well, for instance, the budget book that you're looking at was done as part of the printing.
Yeah, we got to pay that bill.
Right.
I have to remember to do that tomorrow.
Beautiful, just beautiful. And Liz, are you in it? Are you one of the pictures?
I didn't get a picture of Liz, or was she on the front?
No. She
I meant the. That
You
was,
want me to send a picture?
that was
so
just
you
my
can
fun
see?
question.
too late now.
Okay.
I have to find it anyway.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody else on Ways and Means have any questions for the mayor, Liz, or Danny this evening on the presentation of the overall budget and the mayor's budget?
I did have a kind of a piggyback, but I didn't realize I was on mute before. With regard to the local receipts coming in, it was kind of to piggyback off of Jenny's question. The obviously parking went down through the last couple of years, but noticing that there's very little comeback to it, and then even with like the tickets, so the enforcement, did we just over budget what we thought we were going to get for those years before? Because it seems like it's about a half of what the expected meters would be, and then like a sixth of the, or sorry, a third, like a third of the parking tickets. I just didn't know, have people become that much more compliant with paying for parking and just not parking at all?
COVID. It's all ramifications of COVID. We
Right.
saw it going. Yeah.
I don't think we expected to see, well, of course we didn't know. We're like 2 years in, right? I don't
Right.
think we probably thought, we all thought, remember, we were going to close down for like 3 weeks and then everything was going to be fine. But I
Right.
think, as time went on, I know we were thinking, okay, well, this year will be bad, but it'll rebound next year. But people have gotten different in their, not just working remotely, but I think just habits are different. And I don't think we've seen that bounce back yet for parking. It's not as clearly.
And I will also add, Councilor Tarunza, we have 2 parking enforcement officers.
Mhm.
And for a while, we had only 1.
Yep.
Because one of them retired, and then she loved being a parking enforcement officer so much she came back. She loved all that abuse, I guess. I don't know. So we're happy to have her back, for sure. She's an ambassador as well as the parking enforcement officer in that strange way. She's great at explaining why you're getting this parking ticket.
Right.
We did go. We also went through a period of leniency. We really tiptoed back into being real strict about parking.
We did.
It gets a lot of warnings, but we should be back on fully now. So watch where you park.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Well, if
I had
Mike?
one more, was on
Sure.
the Medicaid also seemed to drop significantly on that. What could you explain that revenue loss?
So that is partially due to a change that happened before COVID in what the federal government was going to reimburse for. it was going to go down anyway. However, with school being closed, a lot of that money is derived from special needs services
Oh, gotcha.
that are done, and they just weren't being done.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
expected to rise back up?
No, I
No.
do not think it will rise
No.
back up because they just aren't covering as much.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
that piece is really covered by the federal government to speak,
Gotcha.
you know, for the most part. It's just whatever they do and say about Medicaid reimbursements for the most part.
Okay. Oh, are we all set? Any more questions?
I have one more.
Sure. Go ahead,
Um,
Ginny.
Interest income. This is page 35. That's where Mike was just looking. Right above where you were, Mike, on Medicaid reimbursement, the interest income.
Yes.
So I was just wondering, do we have less of an amount that we're saving? When you look, which is fine. I mean, I know that the interest rate fluctuates annually, you know, what you'd be paid in interest, but like in 2018, it was 71, 136,095, and so 19. So why did that number change? That's all. I'm just curious.
We have a lot of capital projects going on. There's a lot of expenditures going out the door.
So, okay, so instead of, I get it.
So sometimes, you know, if the treasurer doesn't need to borrow, she won't borrow, you know, because it costs money,
Yeah.
temporarily borrow. Which means you get more interest. Or you don't get as much interest if you're covering those expenses, I
Got
guess.
it. Okay, that's
It's
all.
like using cash instead of borrowing for the car here and there.
Right, right.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I think we've covered as much as we possibly can this evening. I want to thank everybody for being here. Ways and Means. I'll see you again shortly. Mayor and Liz
Thank
and
you.
Danny, I'll see you again shortly. Is
Thank
there any
you.
other business that needs to be taken care of this evening? Okay. Our next meeting is Thursday, April 14th, 2022, 6 p.m. via WebEx. And we will be hosting the schools. First, the Greenfield Public Schools, and second, Franklin County Technical School. It's in your budget book. Everybody read it and brush up on it. If there's no further business, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So move disorder.
Second, Toronto.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your work. Keep at it. We'll see you soon.
Okay.
Does too.
Thank you all very
Good
much.
night, everyone.
The meeting is closed at 7:15 p.m.